prestige of Nebbiolo. And I mean, for me, it's one of my favorite grapes. I love Pinot Noir and I love Nebbiolo. Those are my two go-tos, and not dissimilar in their, elegance and the way they behave on the palate. So I think that it's been really interesting to watch that journey with the consumer. It's a little bit cost prohibitive, so certainly certain people will shy away from that category unless they know what they're looking for, right? You've got a great recommendation from someone you know, from a Greg Randall, from one of our Twin Liquors employees who's well versed in that wine, and we get them there, to experience the beauty.
Hey y'all, I'm Jessica Dupuy, guest host for a special series on the Barolo and Barbaresco World Opening 2025, presented by Landmarks. This fourth edition of BBWO will showcase the latest releases of 2021 Barolo and 2022 Barbaresco wines from Piedmont and takes place in Austin, Texas on March 25th. Join me in the heart of Texas as we delve into the experiences and insights about the terroir of the Longueuil region and its star grape variety, Nebbiolo. We'll talk to sommeliers and retailers from the key markets of Austin, Dallas, Houston, and beyond about the alluring wines of the Barolo and Barbaresco regions. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe and rate our show wherever you rate your podcasts. Note: this series is funded by the European Union. Views and opinions expressed are, however, those of the podcast participants only and do not necessarily reflect those of the European Union or of the granting authority. Neither the European Union nor the granting authority can be held responsible for them. Okay, well, Sandra Spalding, welcome to the Italian Wine Podcast. I am so happy to be able to catch up with you in this medium. It's great to see you.
Great to see you as well, Jessica. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited to have kind of your perspective on things today. I think it's going to be a really good switch from kind of, more like restaurant sommelier kind of perspective. And I think it's an important piece of the puzzle when it comes to kind of understanding the Austin market. Why don't we start with just you telling us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been in Austin, and then we'll kind of move into Twin Liquors.
Yeah, so I've been in Austin since 2000, moved here actually like from the hospitality industry out of state. And so when I first moved to Austin, I thought I was going to be in the restaurant or bar business. That's like where I was heading. But I just happened to walk into a Twin Liquors. I was looking for some stuff at HEB and couldn't find it there. So then I ended up walking into a Twin, and it was fortuitous because like that's where I really stumbled into like the second part of my career, where I made that shift from hospitality restaurant into the retail side. And it was because I walked into this little store and I was like, oh my gosh, look at this single malt Scotch whiskey collection. Look at this Italian wine collection. Holy moly, I want to learn more about this. I was pretty well versed in like California wines and that sort of thing, and bourbon, but then like here we go. And so I started my journey at Twin in 2000 just with that hunger for knowledge.
So right off the bat, when you came to Austin, you came to Twin Liquors. That's amazing.
I really did. Yeah. And it, like I said, it was really fortuitous, and it just kind of happened. I was at an HEB and there was Twin Liquors right next door. I just walked in and I was like, oh, this is where I want to be. And so I just like I spent probably about 7-ish years on the retail side at Twin. And it was just like hunger for knowledge and relationships and meeting lots of really great people too. I was out in the Lakeway area, so like the gateway to the hill country. So I got to meet a lot of really neat people when I was working, on the retail side before I transitioned to corporate. So
okay, that's awesome. We'll kind of fill in the gaps on that, but I want to make sure we give some good context here because this is interesting. Twin Liquors, I'm going to have you give a tiny bit of the history, but from my perspective, so I'm sort of a unicorn in that I'm actually from Austin, grew up in Lake Travis, so the Lakeway area. And, Twin Liquors, obviously as a child, I was not aware of it, which is probably good, but getting into my adulthood and kind of like career life, Twin Liquors is a family-owned and operated retail shop. So obviously liquors is in it. So it's wine and spirits and beer and probably other things in between. I don't know your whole list, but it's also a chain. So it's in multiple different places throughout the Austin area and the extended area, and has kind of this reputation for being, yes, a chain, so a business that runs in multiple locations, but also extremely authentic to this localness of Austin. But maybe you could tell me more about it. When did it get started? Tell me about, the Jabors, everything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it really has been an innovative company. So in 1937, the company started a package store situation, 6th Street, Congress, downtown Austin. And from there, I'm going to fast forward to the 80s because for a long time it was Jabor's package store. There were two locations at a certain time. And so in the 80s, in honor of their father, who was one of the twins, it used to be called Jabor's Package Store, but then David Jabor and Margaret Jabor, the siblings, decided in the 80s, we want to continue the legacy of our family and really create something special. So they changed it to Twin Liquors in honor of their father. And so at that time, the store was on 7th and Red River, so a little 700 square foot store. And really the idea was like food and wine pairings, elevate the industry. And Margaret, especially having come from the fashion industry, was very bullish on making it a place where women felt comfortable coming to shop, and so that's kind of how that whole thing just, it really started there at the corner of 7th and Red River. And so from there it just kind of expanded, and it took about a year or so until all the wholesale accounts downtown started knocking on the door saying, hey, you're right here, can you service us? And so that wasn't really in the plan, and David and Margaret were like, well, let's, with their Uncle Gabe, who was part of the business, like, let's try to do this. And so that connectivity with what happened at 7th and Red River, and the twin becoming twin, the mission statement, so to speak, of the business at that time, and then combined with that wholesale connectivity, really was what sparked and ignited all of that. And so from there, about 10 years later, the second location opened at Mesa and Spicewood Springs, and then so on and so on. And I know a lot of people like know that location, and then the Balcones location, which was really well known for Italian and French wine and single malt Scotch. And so just a lot of really nice things happened in that kind of first 10 years that really like laid the groundwork for where we were able to then just continue to expand.
I think, one of the words you used at the beginning of that story is innovative. And I think that's a really important piece to make. So, I mean, everybody knows in the US, like New York and in the West Coast, LA, San Francisco, even Chicago, it's like these are the places where wine has gotten to first, right? In terms of people understanding a global world of wine. Texas for so many years was like, yes, we have industry in Dallas, Houston, Austin, but it wasn't a wine capital, so to speak, in terms of being a middle state in the country, things like that. So for a family in the 1930s, right, like in 40s and moving on, to be thinking like, we really need to have great wine and spirits here. And then fast forward to where we are now, Austin alone has grown in its kind of vibrancy and understanding of wine and demand for wine. And so I love that, the Jabors have been kind of there from the get go, pushing that people would have an experience and a discovery of wines, such as Italian wines. You know what I mean? Maybe talk about kind of how you've seen that evolve yourself being here 24 years ago. Austin was a very different city then. So maybe kind of talk about that.
It's so exciting. I mean, I love where Austin is now, and it's so neat to be part of the fabric of the history, or the short-term history that we've seen this explosion in the wine community, and as you have seen too, back in 2000, and I was on the retail side of Twin, really being able to say like, I want to get into this education component of it, and then personally, along with a few of my colleagues, our leadership team, studying through the WSET program, which at the time, like, we chose that because it was more retail oriented as opposed to like, the SOM journey, etc. And so we did that, and then we started to see this really great connectivity with like tasting groups and different people that we were connecting with. Greg Randall, who ran the Good Taste Report, is a very good friend of ours, and he, has hosted countless number of wine groups. I was thinking about it this morning, and what is, I think, really special about Austin and why it's grown the way it has is it's just like with the music. Like, we're a stop on everybody's journey through the United States. So like, you can see every great band here because they want to come here. Same thing with winemakers. It's all like this personal reason that they want to come to Austin and just spend some time. So we've had so many amazing people come to us, like, I mean, yes, it's great. Like you and I have had the, luxury to be able to travel for our jobs and go to these amazing, beautiful places and see the wine made there. But wow, how lucky are we that they come to us consistently. And I think with that, it's really created this culture of like hospitality, conviviality that's tied, that ties to wine. I mean, it's a tactile thing, right? So
Right.
I think, I think that's the core piece of what we really, why we've experienced what we've experienced here. I hope
Yeah.
that answers your question.
No, it does. I'm not going to go into numbers. This is not a city report, but certainly explosion in population over the past 20 years, and certainly within the past 5 years, that's grown even more exponentially. And I think me being from here, you being here for as long as you have, you're right. Like sometimes I take for granted. It is a beautiful city. It's very outdoor, recreational friendly, but the community that's grown here is a community of just really exciting people, the culture itself. And so music has me hooked because that's what I grew up on, live music here. But to see people really appreciate that from all over and want to come it's a really great point that I think, yeah, I take for when you're from here, you kind of take it all for granted, but it's very true. I wonder, kind of moving back to Twin, you guys have a reputation for being so outward focused towards the consumer. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the outreach that you guys have in terms of wine education. You mentioned like Greg Randall doing tastings years ago. Maybe he still does. I don't know, but Greg is awesome. But tell me just a little bit about kind of how you guys try to reach the consumer to bring them in on wine and give them more of an appreciation for it.
It's been a journey for sure. I think, I'd mentioned earlier, our colleagues, we did the WSET program. We really quickly realized that educating our staff was a hugely important thing for us. And so we brought the Wine and Spirit, Twin Liquors Wine and Spirits Academy, an in-house education program based on WSET, to where we've put through like 700 students that are all Twin Liquors employees. I know it's crazy. It's staggering to me to
Wow.
look at that number. Very focused on like level one wine, level one spirits, but we've done level twos and we have quite a few level threes. We've got a diploma now too, we've got an educator team of like, I think it's 7 or 8 of us. And it's wild to think. Yeah. And all through the WSET. I say that because it starts with your foundation, right? And so with that, then our employees are able to have meaningful conversations with our customers. We're not salespeople, we're just building relationships. And I do think that, again, back to hospitality, back to like sharing a bottle, sitting, tasting. I think, like, is this like bold thing to say that the systematic approach to tasting, it's kind of romantic because it makes you sit down with another person and calibrate your palate with them, right? And but it's in doing that you're exchanging like words and thoughts and emotions that are unique to you, but like trying to get that other people to see your perspective. It transcends like, gender, color, race, all of that, and it's a really beautiful thing. And I think that's like what brings us back to wine, and wine and food, anything tactile to taste, so
Yeah, it's a really good point. I love the word exchange, right? It's a romantic exchange. No, I think that's really good. And speaking of romantic exchange, I think, perhaps one of the regions in the world that's most heralded as having that romanticism, right? Like, great segue. Certainly Italian wine. And today we're speaking specifically about Barolo and Barbaresco. And I wonder if you could kind of talk about that in terms of the retail side of things. Kind of what is the demand or interest for Italian wine, and then specifically kind of these iconic wine regions, Barolo and Barbaresco?
For a lot of folks, I mean, everybody knows Tuscany, right? Just because of travel and media. And so that romantic notion of like Tuscany, it's a word. I mean, even people who don't understand wine are able to connect with that because of the region itself. And so, I mean, when I started, at Twin back in 2000, definitely like Tuscans, super Tuscans, like were the word. But as people start to evolve in their Italian journey, they start to find things like right now, like a huge excitement for Southern Italian wines. There's value there, unique flavor profiles, all that kind of stuff that's happening. So that's drawing people in. And then I think, like the prestige of Nebbiolo. And I mean, for me, it's one of my favorite grapes. I love Pinot Noir and I love Nebbiolo. Those are my two go-tos. And not dissimilar in their, elegance and the way they behave on the palate. So I think that it's been really interesting to watch that journey with the consumer. It's a little bit cost prohibitive. So certainly certain people will shy away from that category unless they know what they're looking for, right? You've got a great recommendation from someone from a Greg Randall, from one of our Twin Liquors employees who's well versed in that wine. And we get them there, to experience the beauty. So
Yeah, no, I think that's a really important point. And I mean, Barolo and Barbaresco both being kind of situated in this beautiful region of Piemonte. I think, we've had a couple of different people talk about how, your gateway into Piemonte is maybe, Langhe Nebbiolo or some Gattinara. And I think that that is a way kind of build onto where you go next, which is where, these particular regions, Barolo and Barbaresco, both have such unique soils, such unique climates, microclimates. And so their ability to take Nebbiolo and into a whole different stratosphere, if you will, is pretty fantastic. And I feel like you're not alone in saying like, I love Nebbiolo. That's my favorite grape. When I talk to different people, whether it's soccer moms with my kids, friends, or other people in the industry, ultimately they've maybe experienced that in some degree, whether it's a fine Barolo or, like a Gaia Barbaresco or something like that. And then they want to figure out, how do I bring more of that into my life?
that's so cool. I love hearing that from you. Yeah.
Yeah. And selfishly, I mean, like, it's definitely my top grape. It's always between Sangiovese and Nebbiolo for me. So Pinot Noir is actually not in the top three for me, but that's okay. I mean, everybody's different. Everybody has different positions on these things. So, if somebody is looking to discover, right, they're coming in, you've got this educated staff. When you start to go into talking about these regions, it is a jump if you haven't purchased wine at that level before. But despite like the price tag, right, you could argue that because of the quality that the value is still there, right? So how do you guys kind of go about explaining, this is what's compelling about these wines, and this is why, if you can financially give it a shot, this is why it's worth giving it that shot?
I mean, obviously starting them, like you said, with if it's totally new to the category, just starting with like a Langhe Nebbiolo, like yes, 100%, that is great advice. Something like a Vietti is a great place to start too. Like, and what's nice is I always try to tell people, like, maybe even start by finding a restaurant that's pouring something really great that you can have by the glass. I mean, we have so many cool bars and restaurants in town now. I'm a Daydreamer, pouring like cru wines, and it's like, that's so cool. So you can like kind of keep an eye out for some of that as well. But as far as like the retail journey, just being able to, do a little research on some good vintages. Of course, we can always help guide with that. Recent vintages like 2018, not to get like too granular, but we can help guide to what you want to do there if you're liking the flavor of the grape, right? So we'll start you with something like that. Okay, you're going to come back, and then for us, again, it's about like the story that's in the bottle, right? And just being able to take a journey almost and really talk about I always tell people, think about the place. I mean, if you've never been there, that's kind of hard, but like think about the place, think about the climate, the sunshine, the fog, the soil, whatever it may be. You can start to taste these things in the wine. Some people might look at you like you're crazy, but I think most people are into it. They're like, yes. I mean, okay, so like currently like in this existential crisis right now about like what chat gpt is doing like to everything in the world, right? But like it can't take away it can't take away the physicality of tasting things, and sharing all of that. So it's like, to me, that's what's so exciting about food and drink, is that will always be a thing that's just like unique to you, that nothing is going to be able to take away from you. So I go off on a tangent with that, but it is relevant because I think when you can instill that excitement, make someone realize like, oh, this is where I can go with this journey. You can travel
Yeah.
tasting wine.
Yeah, the cultural experience that comes along with it, you know. It's funny. In some ways, it's perhaps a good idea to start a business where it's like, we're a wine retail shop and also a travel agency. So let me take
Yes.
you to Barolo. Let me show you the hills of Barbaresco. I think that would be really cool. But that's a side note. So let me ask you this. In March, we've got the Barolo and Barbaresco World Open coming. And this is a really great opportunity for these two regions to really show themselves to not only Austinites, but Texans, because we've got a lot of Texans coming from Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and everywhere in between. It's a big state. And so I'm just curious, these two regions in particular kind of have a reputation for being collectors wines, right? Like, or you can find a lot of wines in here that are collector worthy. So how does an event like this, where you can have consumers come, walk around, taste these wines, how does that make this approachable to enthusiasts who may not be at collector level, or, may just need a little taste, so to speak? Pardon the pun on that. How does it become approachable for them?
I think so. First of all, wow, what an opportunity is what I've been telling people. You will not in your lifetime probably ever get an opportunity like this. And this goes back to what we were talking about before. They all want to come to Austin.
No.
Like, they're coming to you. So like the heavy lifting of the travel and all of that is taken out of it. Find out who the producers are that are going to be there is my number one advice. Make a list, talk to somebody that that understands wine, and get their advice on like, here are the top 10 to prioritize tasting. As you and I know, palate fatigue is a real thing. For professionals, we can get through it, but for people who are not, beware. Taste and spit, all that good stuff. But I would say like find someone you're comfortable with to give you some advice on who to prioritize, right? And then like looking at some stuff that's approachable. Try to taste some stuff that, wow, you'll never, these amazing. Maybe someone might have an older vintage open at their table, and really really get in on that and ask questions for sure. Like, there are no dumb questions, and it is intimidating. It's so intimidating, but don't let it be. I mean, you, right, Jessica, you and we're approachable. Like, ask questions.
Yeah, and I'll be there. So you'll be there. So yeah, come find us. We'll walk you through a few things. That's actually a really good point, though. The kind of the tips you're giving to help navigate something like this, because yes, definitely spit. We're not going to be judgy or tell you what to do, but it's Nebbiolo. This is not like, it's not Cabernet Sauvignon. These are some serious wines that are going to be available there. So it does help, if you want to get the best out of it, to be able to taste as many wines, which means don't drink them all, maybe just taste and spit. But, one of the things that I think of like as an opportunity for a retailer like yourself is, I'm quite sure, maybe I'm wrong, but like if you were to take the entire list that of producers that are going to be there from both Barbaresco and Barolo, it's possible that Twin may not have them all right on the shelf.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'd say like more than half. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I love about this, and as Austin community, it's like if consumers come and experience a wine that blows them away, that they weren't expecting to find, and this is a discovery for them, they can come to a Twin and say, I tasted this at BBWO. How can I get it? Like, do y'all have the relationships with the distributors and the wholesalers? And that's the part of, I think consumers don't realize that they have that opportunity to request, to say, can you please get this somehow to Austin?
Yes.
How often are y'all fielding those types of requests?
We do, and we have a lot of folks that do special order. We white glove futures for folks. I mean, there are some stores that are a little bit more versed in it than others. our store in Westlake, the store at the Balcones location, but we've got stores in Dallas that where we have like that clientele that's already shopping and the team is versed in being able to like handle those types of requests. As long as it comes through a distributor, we can get it. And if it doesn't, we can look into how to get it, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So, I mean, that's kind of my thing for the enthusiast to kind of be like, walk into this as an opportunity, not just to taste some cool wines that you've already heard of, but to try to discover something that, if you're able to get it to Austin, chances are, Twin's going to stock more than just one bottle. So you're going to be able to expose other people to that producer as well, which is pretty fun. I'm trying to think of other things that I like to tell people when navigating. I mean, I'm a journalist and by nature curious and talk to people with all sorts of questions, sometimes ad nauseum, sometimes it's annoying. But I would come with 2 or 3 questions just kind of in your pocket that you want to like repeat as you go to from producer to producer, just so that you're like gathering good information, not just like, oh, what do you want me to taste today, And I love that you said at the beginning, like, oh my gosh, you got all these producers and they're all excited to come to Austin, which actually does put a burden on us as Austinites and as Texans to show them a good time, right? Like, we want them to show us the good wines, but we should also show them that, like, we're excited about them being here, but also like, hey, make sure you go to this restaurant spot or make sure you go check out, this bar while you're in town, that kind of thing.
Yes, we are. That's so funny you bring that up because I talk to people all as part of my job, I deal with the community outreach side of Twist. So it's not just marketing and education, but community outreach. And so I deal with a lot of nonprofits. I also meet lots of folks who've just moved to Austin and continually, I sit on a board. David, Margaret, they sit on different boards. We're very philanthropically focused. Twin Liquors is on our community, but I'm always telling people like, you are now an Austinite. It is your duty here to like continue to add to the community and make it a great place for everybody here and visiting. And so I love that you said that because like I'm always very like every time my question is when people come to visit, where'd you stay last night? Where'd you eat? Like, what are y'all doing? Like I need to know these things. Did you go see a band? What's happening? Like, want to make sure that they're like doing all the right things they should be to having the best experience possible in Austin.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point. And yes, it's in our nature for sure. But I think it's just more of a rally for everyone who's involved that like, this is an exchange, right? You can get as much out of it as you want to. And I've been to different Italian based expos or tastings like this. And I love the warmth and like conviviality of the Italian general personality, which I realize is an overgeneralization, but generally everyone's very excited to be able to tell you about their story, tell you about their wines. And so it's always such a good time. And I think that's actually what I'm looking forward to most is the wine's going to be great, but the stories are going to be even better.
I'm so excited. I have to share with you too, like, growing up, my friends always used to tease me. They're like, oh, you're like old Italian man trapped in a young Armenian girl's body. And I was like, it's all that's always been in me. And then I was listening to one of your podcasts, like just random on it about the Italianality, I think
Oh
it's called.
yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, this is incredible. I'm excited for the book, by the way. Like
Oh,
that's
good.
yes, super excited to read the book, but it's true. There is just something so like joyful, right, about Italy. And then I heard the word, oh my God, how have we not thought of this before? But chowdy, and I was like, my head was just exploding with all this excitement. So, and not to disparage, other wine regions, but there is something so special about Italy, and we all feel it, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Shout out to Jeff Porter for coining chowdy as his word of choice. I'm a former Central Market, Tex Austinite person for a short time, but we miss him. Well, Sandra, thank you so much for joining us for kind of this discussion and giving us an understanding of more of what's exciting from the retail side for Barolo and Barbaresco. I think that the selection at Twin is fantastic. And as we've talked about, like if you don't see something there that you really want to try to see, the openness to try to bring things into our community is fantastic. So thanks for kind of talking with us about that. And I will see you at BBWO.
Yes, in just a few weeks. Exciting.
All right, take care.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this special series on the Barolo and Barbaresco World Opening 2025. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and rate us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Special note, this series is funded by the European Union. Views and opinions expressed are, however, those of the podcast participants only and do not necessarily reflect those of the European Union or of the granting authority. Neither the European Union nor the granting authority can be held responsible for them.